you so much. Thank you so much. I do this because I love y'all. You know, I want you to have everything that I experienced, right? I had wonderful parents who loved on me, poured into me, and protected me.
She walked onto that stage and the whole room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that happens when a celebrity enters. Not the polished, rehearsed silence that follows a production cue. This was something different. This was the kind of quiet that falls over a crowd when they sense, before a single word is spoken, that something real is about to happen, something true, something they've been waiting to hear for a long, long time. And then she spoke. I do this because I love y'all. 5 words. That's all it took. And in those 5 words, Lauryn Hill reminded an entire generation why she mattered in the first place, why she still matters, why she will always matter. But here's what I want to talk to you about today, because this isn't just a story about a speech. This isn't just a story about an awards show moment. This is the story of a woman who paid a price most of us will never fully understand, who disappeared when the world needed her most, who was misunderstood and misjudged and written off and underestimated, and who came back. Not to prove something to the industry, not to settle scores, not to chase relevance or clout or a comeback narrative. She came back because she genuinely, deeply, wholeheartedly loves the people she makes music for. And that, in a world that has become so calculated and so performative and so utterly hollow, is one of the most radical things a human being can do. So let's talk about Lauryn Hill. Let's really talk about her. Let's go back to the beginning, walk through the middle, and sit with what this moment means. Because if you take the time to understand the full arc of this woman's life and career and sacrifice, what she said on that stage will hit you completely differently. I promise you that. Let's go. There's a neighborhood in South Orange, New Jersey, where a little girl grew up knowing exactly who she was. That's not a small thing. Most of us spend decades, some of us entire lifetimes, trying to figure out who we are, trying to find our voice, trying to locate the thing inside us that makes us feel alive and purposeful and connected to something bigger than ourselves. Lauryn Noel Hill was not most of us. From the very beginning, she was somebody who knew. She was born on May 26, 1975. Her father, Mal Hill, was a computer consultant. Her mother, Valerie Hill, was a school teacher. And look, this part matters more than people realize, because Lauryn didn't come from chaos. She didn't come from dysfunction. She came from love. Structured, consistent, purposeful love. She said it herself on that stage, and she said it with such tenderness that you could feel the weight of what she was carrying when she said it. She said, I had wonderful parents who loved on me, poured into me, and protected me. Poured into me. That phrase. Think about what it means. To pour into someone is to give of yourself. It's to invest. It's to believe in someone before they've done anything to earn that belief, simply because they exist and they're yours and you love them. That's what her parents did for her. And she knew, even as a little girl, even before she fully understood what that gift was, she knew she had received something precious, something not everyone gets, and that knowing shaped everything that came after. She was performing publicly by the time she was 13 years old. 13, she appeared on the Showtime at the Apollo television program while still in middle school, doing a Smokey Robinson cover, and the audience was not immediately kind to her. There were boos, there was resistance, and she kept going. She finished her performance. She stood on that stage and she finished. And that moment, that small, painful, defining moment, told you everything you needed to know about Lauryn Hill. She was not someone who would be stopped by the crowd. She was not someone who would let the noise of the world drown out the music inside her. By the time she was in high school at Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey, she was already a local legend. She was performing in theater productions. She was on the honor roll. She was someone that teachers remembered and peers admired. And it was here, in these hallways, that she connected with 2 young men named Wyclef Jean and Pras Michel. Together, they would form a group that would change the sound of American music forever, the Fugees. Now, I need to spend some time here because people who are younger might know Lauryn Hill primarily as a solo artist. They might know the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. They might know her voice, her face, her story. But they might not fully appreciate what the Fugees were, what they meant, what they did. Because the Fugees weren't just a successful music group. They were a cultural earthquake. Their 1996 album, The Score, became one of the best-selling rap albums in history. It moved more than 17 million copies worldwide. 17 million. Their cover of Killing Me Softly, a song originally made famous by Roberta Flack, became a global phenomenon. It topped charts in the United Kingdom. It became the kind of song that crossed every boundary, age, race, genre, geography. People who didn't listen to hip-hop listened to the Fugees. People who had never paid attention to a rap group before stopped what they were doing when that song came on. And at the center of it was Lauryn, her voice, her presence, her ability to move between singing and rapping with a fluidity that felt completely natural, completely effortless, even though everyone in the music industry knew it was anything but effortless. It was the product of years of work, years of practice, years of commitment to craft. But when Lauryn did it, It looked like breathing. She was 21 years old when the score was released. 21. And she was already one of the most recognized voices in the world. But here's the thing about being that talented, that young, that visible. The world doesn't always know what to do with you. The industry doesn't always know how to hold you. And the people around you don't always have your best interests at heart. And Lauryn Hill was about to learn that lesson in the most painful way possible. Let me pause here for a second, because I want to be honest with you about something. When I started putting this together, when I started really digging into Lauryn's story, something happened to me that I didn't expect. I felt something, not just admiration, not just appreciation for the music. I felt a kind of grief, a quiet, heavy grief. Because when you trace the arc of what happened to this woman between the height of the Fugees and the release of her solo album and everything that came after, you start to understand that what she lost, was enormous. And most people have never taken the time to really sit with that. So I want you to sit with me here for a minute. Just a minute, because this story is not just about a singer. It's about what happens to brilliance when the world around it isn't ready. It's about what happens when a human being carries gifts that are bigger than the systems designed to contain them. It's about the cost of standing in your truth when the industry, the media, the public, the people closest to you, when all of it is pushing you to be something smaller than what you are. That's Lauryn Hill's story, and it deserves to be told with that kind of weight. Okay, let's keep going. In the late 1990s, Lauryn Hill made a decision that most people in her position would never have made. She stepped back from the Fugees, a group at the absolute peak of their commercial power, and she decided to make a solo album. Her album, on her terms, about the things she wanted to talk about. That decision alone should tell you something about who she is. Because the safe thing to do is obvious. Stay with the Fugees. Keep making music that was already proven to sell. Keep riding a wave that was still at full height. That was the career move. That was the smart business decision. That was what her label wanted, what the industry expected, what the momentum of her career was pointing toward. She said no. And instead, she went to a house in the hills of New Jersey, and she made the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Now, albums get called classic all the time. The word gets thrown around so casually in music conversation that it's almost lost its meaning. But the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is a true classic in the deepest, most serious sense of that word. It is an album that stands completely alone. There is nothing else quite like it in the history of recorded music. Nothing that sounds quite like it. Nothing that feels quite like it. Nothing that covers the same ground with the same grace and the same pain and the same joy and the same spiritual weight. It was released on August 25th, 1998. And the world stopped. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart. It sold over 420,000 copies in its first week, the highest first-week sales ever recorded for a female artist at that time. It eventually sold more than 19 million copies worldwide. 19 million. For an album that was deeply personal, deeply political, deeply spiritual, deeply uncommercial in the best possible sense. An album that refused to be simple. An album that asked its listeners to feel things they might not have been comfortable feeling. The songs were extraordinary. X Factor. If you've ever loved someone so much it hurt, if you've ever stayed in something you knew wasn't good for you because leaving felt impossible, you know, X Factor, that opening guitar line. Lauryn's voice coming in like a conversation she's having with herself in the middle of the night, the way the song builds and breaks and builds again. It's not just a song about a relationship. It's a song about the human condition, about the part of us that holds on even when holding on is destroying us. Do Wop's That Thing. The energy, the joy. The celebration of Black culture and Black beauty alongside a warning, a real serious loving warning, about dignity and self-worth. Lauryn wasn't talking down to anyone. She was talking to herself as much as anyone else. That honesty, that willingness to include herself in the conversation, is what made it land so differently than a lecture would have. To Zine. Possibly the most personal song on the album. Possibly one of the most personal songs ever recorded. It's about the moment Lauryn discovered she was pregnant, the pressure she felt from people around her to make a different decision, and the choice she made to keep her child. She named him Zion, and the song is a love letter to him, a thank you. Unsure of what the balance held, I touched my belly overwhelmed by what I had been chosen to perform. That's not a lyric. That's a prayer. That's testimony. Everything is everything. A statement of purpose, a declaration, a reminder that in the end, the universe moves toward what is meant. It was a song about faith. Not religious faith in the narrow, doctrinal sense, but faith in the larger sense. Faith that the work matters. Faith that the love is real. Faith that what you put into the world comes back to you somehow, in some form, even when you can't see how. And then the album ends with Tell Him. Quiet and intimate and full of a kind of spiritual longing that doesn't have a simple name. It's the sound of someone who has found something worth believing in and is trying to put words around that feeling. It's the sound of someone at peace, even in the middle of everything being complicated and hard. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill won 5 Grammy Awards in 1999, 5, including Album of the Year, making Lauryn Hill the first solo female artist to win that award in that genre. The first, she was 23 years old. 23 years old, Album of the Year, 5 Grammys, 19 million copies sold, the whole world at her feet. And then she disappeared. This is the part of the story that gets told in the most reductive way possible. The tabloids would have you believe it was simply about a breakdown, or eccentricity, or an unwillingness to play the game. The gossip columns reduced it to headlines about concert tardiness and strange behavior and a woman who had lost the plot. And because those narratives traveled so far and so fast, they became the default story. They became what people assumed was true. But the truth is more complicated, and more human, and more important. Here's what was actually happening. Lauryn Hill had made an album that was completely, entirely, wholly her own. Every decision, every lyric, every arrangement, every note, that was her. And the music industry, which had been happy to celebrate her for it, was now expecting her to do it again, to deliver another masterpiece on demand, to step back into the studio and somehow recreate the exact conditions that had produced something so singular and so rare that it had never existed before. And she couldn't do that, not because she lacked talent. Not because she had run out of ideas, but because the miseducation had come from a specific place, a specific moment, a specific emotional and spiritual state, and you can't manufacture that. You can't schedule it, you can't force it, and the pressure of being expected to force it was suffocating. She also became a mother. Not just to Zion, but to more children. She had 5 children in total with Rohan Marley, yes, the son of Bob Marley. And anyone who has been a parent knows. Anyone who has really done the work of parenting knows that you cannot be everything to everyone all the time. Something has to give. And Lauryn chose her children. She chose to be present. She chose to be the kind of mother her own parents had been to her. The kind of mother who pours into her children, who protects them, who loves them with intention and attention and consistency. The industry didn't understand that, or didn't want to. There were also financial and legal complications. Disputes with producers over credits and royalties that were painful and public and draining in ways that went far beyond money. When you've poured your heart and your soul and your truth into something, and then you have to fight about who owns it, something in you breaks a little. Something that's very hard to repair. And then there was the internal stuff, the spiritual reckoning, because Lauryn Hill is a deeply, seriously spiritual person. Not in a performative way, not in the way that celebrities sometimes adopt spirituality as a brand. In a real, searching, questioning, costly way. She was wrestling with enormous questions about faith and purpose and integrity and what it means to live in alignment with what you believe when the world is constantly offering you shortcuts and compromises and easier paths. She gave a concert in 2002 at the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., and during the performance she spoke at length about the spiritual dimensions of her journey. Some people who were there were moved beyond words. Others were confused. The media mostly mocked it. They called it bizarre. They called it a breakdown. They took a woman who was working through the most fundamental questions of human existence, and they made it into a punchline. And she went quiet. Not completely. She released some music here and there. She did some performances. She wasn't gone from the world, but she was gone from the machine. She stepped out of the celebrity industrial complex and into something that looked from the outside like absence but was actually, if you understood it, presence. A different kind of presence. A turning inward, a gathering of self. I want to tell you about something she said in an interview years ago, because it explains so much. She talked about the concept of miseducation, the idea that the title of her album was pointing toward, the idea that we are taught, from the time we are very young, to measure our worth by external things, by approval, by sales numbers, by chart positions, by what other people think, by how we're received, by whether the crowd cheers or boos. And she was saying that the work of her life, the real work, the deeper work, the work underneath the music, was to unlearn that. To find her way back to a place where her worth was not conditional, where her value was not determined by output or performance or what she could deliver on command. That's not a breakdown. That's growth. That's the kind of growth that is quiet and unglamorous, and often looks like failure from the outside, while being something completely different on the inside. And she did it with children. With 5 children who needed her. Who needed the version of her that was fully present and fully alive and not depleted by the demands of an industry that had never really cared about her as a person, only as a product. She raised those children. She loved those children, and she found her way back. When Lauryn Hill started performing again more regularly, something interesting happened. The people who had never stopped loving her, and there were millions of them all over the world, showed up. They showed up in enormous numbers. They waited hours in lines. They traveled from other cities, other countries. They came because the music had meant something to them that couldn't be measured or quantified, something that had sat inside them through their own hardships and losses and confusions and had helped them get through. The miseducation of Lauryn Hill had done what the greatest art always does. It had become part of people's lives, not background music, part of their actual lives, part of their most important moments. Their heartbreaks and their healings and their early mornings and their late nights and their drives alone and their conversations with God and their moments of clarity and their moments of complete falling apart. And so when she came back, she wasn't coming back to a fickle industry audience. She was coming back to people who loved her, really loved her. The way you love someone who helped you through something. And she felt it. You could see it in her face. You could hear it in her voice. The gratitude was real. The connection was real. Now let's talk about what she actually said on that stage. Because every word matters. Every word was chosen. And when you understand where she's been and what she's carried, the words land with a different kind of weight. She said she does it because she loves the people she makes music for. Not because of the money. Not because of the awards. And she has 5 Grammys, so she could easily make it about the awards if she wanted to. Not because of the legacy or the cultural status or the historical footnotes. Because of love. Because she experienced love from her parents, and she understood early that not everyone gets that, and she made it her life's work to extend that love outward through whatever tools she had. And music was the most powerful tool she had. That's not a PR statement. That's a calling. And there's a difference. She talked about the expression and representation of the dignity of her people. And I want to sit with that phrase for a moment because it is so loaded and so important. Dignity. Not just visibility. Not just representation in the shallow sense of seeing people who look like you on screen or on stage. Dignity. The deeper thing. The thing that says we are human beings of full worth and full complexity and full beauty and full capacity, and our stories deserve to be told with care and with truth and with love. That's what the Miseducation was doing. That's what every song on that album was doing. It was insisting on the full humanity of the people it was speaking to and speaking about. It was refusing to reduce them. It was refusing to simplify them. It was holding up a mirror and saying, you are this complicated and this beautiful and this wounded and this strong and this spiritual and this sensual and this capable. And all of it is real. And all of it deserves a song. She said artists sometimes have to say things that aren't always comfortable. And she's right. And she paid for that. She paid for that in ways that are still being tallied. Because the music industry, like most powerful institutions, is not in the business of discomfort. It's in the business of product. And the most profitable products are the ones that don't challenge anything, don't disrupt anything, don't ask the listener to confront anything difficult about themselves or the world they live in. Lauryn Hill made an album that asked you to confront things. About love, about faith, about race, about motherhood, about what women owe the world and what the world owes women, about God, about doubt, about joy and grief existing in the same breath. That was not comfortable, and she knew it wouldn't be, and she made it anyway, because she believed, as she said on that stage, that people will understand later. That the work you do in truth, even when it's not immediately embraced, even when it confuses people or makes them uncomfortable, will find its audience eventually, will mean what it needs to mean to the people who need it. She was right. She is right. 25 plus years later, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is still the album. It's still the standard. It's still the record that musicians cite when they talk about what they're trying to achieve. It's still the record that people come back to in their most vulnerable moments because it meets them there. She understood later. They all understood later. And then she did something on that stage that I think might have been the most powerful thing of all. She stopped being Lauryn Hill the icon for a moment, and she became Lauryn Hill the mother. I'm a mother, she said. And then she called out her son John, who was celebrating his 23rd birthday, and her daughter Sarah, who had just graduated high school and was heading to the University of Miami. And the crowd went crazy. Not the polished cute applause of an awards show audience. Real joy. Real celebration. Because for a moment, the distance between the icon on the stage and the human being in the seat disappeared. Because every parent in that room knew exactly what she was feeling. That specific joy, that specific pride, that specific overwhelming love that makes you want to stop everything and just say, look at what we made. Look at what we raised. Look at this person that exists in the world because of love. She laughed. She got a little overwhelmed. She apologized for taking too much time, which was charming and unnecessary because she wasn't taking too much time at all. She was giving exactly the right amount of time to the right things. She was modeling something. She was showing what it looks like when someone has their priorities straight. When the thing they're most proud of, the thing that makes them feel most like themselves, isn't the Grammy or the album or the accolade. It's the child. It's the family. It's the love. And her son John said it back to her. Less ma'am. Simple and sweet and full thing that sounded a lot like the way she talked about her own parents. That circle, that continuation, that love being poured and then being returned. She talked about gifts. And I want to spend some time here because this part of her speech is underrated. This part doesn't get quoted as much, but it might be the part that matters most to the most people. She said, we all hold different gifts. Fashion, hair consoling someone, a microphone. And she said that gifting is very important because somebody out there needs your gift. Don't sell your gift short. 5 words. And those 5 words are carrying a tremendous amount of weight if you really hear them. Because most of us do exactly that. We sell our gift short. We compare it to someone else's gift and find it lacking. We measure our particular way of contributing to the world against some external standard of what counts as impressive or important or worthy of attention. And we find ourselves wanting. And Lauryn Hill, a woman with 5 Grammy Awards, a woman with the best-selling debut album by a female rap artist in history, a woman who is by any objective measure one of the most gifted musicians of the last half-century, is standing on a stage telling you not to do that. Telling you that the thing you can do, whatever it is necessary, is needed, is someone's lifeline that you haven't even met yet. That's generous. That's an enormous thing to say and mean. And she meant it. You could tell she meant it. It wasn't a performance of encouragement. It was the actual belief of a woman who has lived long enough and loved deeply enough to know that every human being carries something specific and irreplaceable. And when that thing isn't expressed, when it's hidden or suppressed or sold short, the world is diminished by exactly that amount. She said she's rooting for everyone to be the best version of themselves that they possibly can be. Because God made you that way. And she said they're not going to let institutions stop them from arriving at their inheritance. That word. Inheritance. The inheritance of being who you were made to be. Of living in the fullness of your particular gifts and your particular calling. Of not being reduced or contained or limited by systems that were never designed to hold all of who you are. She said it quietly, but she said it clearly. And in that room full of people who have navigated those exact systems. The music industry, the entertainment industry, the cultural industries that have so often tried to package Black excellence into something safer and more palatable and more profitable for everyone except the people actually doing the work. In that room, those words landed like something seismic. We're not going to let institutions, we're not going to let traps stop us. That's a woman speaking from hard-earned experience. That's a woman who has been inside those institutions and felt the weight of them and made the choice, at enormous personal cost, to not be contained by them. And she's saying neither should you. Neither should any of us. The inheritance is real. The destination is real. The obstacles are real too, but they are not final. They are not the last word. There was one more thing she said that I keep coming back to. She said all of our differences, all of our uniqueness, that's the beauty. We don't have to sound the same. We don't have to look the same. We don't have to be the same. That's the beauty. And she said it twice. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. In a world that is constantly sorting and ranking and flattening and standardizing. In an industry that is always looking for the next version of the last successful thing rather than something genuinely new. In a cultural moment that has 1,000 ways of telling people to make themselves smaller and more uniform and more easily categorized. Lauryn Hill stood on a stage and said the opposite. She said the difference is not the problem. The difference is the point. Your particular sound. Your particular way of seeing. Your particular way of loving and creating and contributing. The specific, irreplaceable thing that only you can bring. That's not a liability. That's the whole gift. She spent her whole career embodying that. She didn't sound like anyone else when the Fugees were at their peak. She definitely didn't sound like anyone else on the Miseducation. And she paid for being that different, being that specific, being that uncompromising in her specificity. She paid for it in ways the glossy version of her career story doesn't always acknowledge. But she also gave it to us. That album exists because she refused to sound like anyone else. Those songs exist because she insisted on her own truth. And 25 years later, we're still talking about it. We're still playing it. We're still feeling it. Let me tell you about the Miseducation Anniversary Tour. Because this is recent. This is the Lauryn Hill we're looking at right now in this moment. In 2023, Lauryn Hill celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Miseducation with a major tour. She brought her daughter Selah along as an opening act. And Selah Hill is, by all accounts, extraordinarily talented in her own right. The tour was a massive event. Audiences across America showed up in numbers that made clear that whatever the music press had said about her over the years, the public had never stopped loving her, had never stopped needing what she gave them. The reviews were mixed, in the way that reviews of Lauryn Hill's performances are often mixed. She performs in ways that prioritize the living, breathing experience of the music over technical precision. She reimagines arrangements. She takes her time. She follows the energy of a room. And some people who wanted something exact and predictable found that disorienting. But the people who were there for the real thing, for the experience of being in a room with one of the greatest artists of the last 50 years while she communes with the music she made, those people understood. Those people got it. Those people walked out of those venues, moved in the way that only live music at its truest and most human can move you. And when she took the stage at the BET Awards, in front of a room full of legends and peers and fans who had grown up with her music, and she said those words, "I do this because I love y'all." She wasn't performing love. She was expressing it. In the way she always has, through her actual self, in real time, without a filter. I want to close with something she said near the end of her speech, because it contains everything. She said, if nobody else shows us respect, let's respect each other. If nobody else loves us, let's love on each other. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to start loving us. And then she said, quietly, almost to herself, they already do, first of all. And then, but we're going to show them how we want to be loved. Read that again. We're going to show them how we want to be loved. Not demand it. Not wait for it. Not hope for it from the outside. Show them. Model it. Live it. Practice it with each other until it becomes the standard. Until the standard you set for how you treat each other becomes the standard the world has to meet to be in relationship with you. That's profound. That's not just advice for a music community or a cultural community. That's wisdom for any human being trying to navigate a world that doesn't always value what is truly valuable. That's a blueprint for dignity. That's a framework for self-respect that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or recognition. She's saying, don't wait for the world to decide you're worth loving. Start there. Start with each other. Build it in, build it up, build it so strong and so real that anyone who encounters you has no choice but to meet you at that level or reveal themselves as someone who can't. That's Lauryn Hill. That's what she's been saying her whole career. Through the music and through the silence and through the comeback and through the complicated years and through the speeches and through the moments of vulnerability and through the moments of strength. She has been saying the same thing in 1,000 different ways. You are worth it. The love is real. The gift is real. The inheritance is real. Don't let anyone or anything convince you otherwise. She closed her speech by asking everyone to celebrate each other, to honor each other, to hold each other with the same care that she received from her parents and has tried to pour back out into the world through everything she does. And she said the world will be a safer place for us to be the greatest versions of ourselves. Because that's really what it is. That brilliance, that greatness in everyone. It's intimidating sometimes. We shine so bright. She said that with such warmth, such knowing, such love, because that's the truth of it. The fullness of what human beings are capable of. The full expression of every gift, every talent, every form of brilliance. It really is overwhelming sometimes. Not because it's too much, because it's exactly enough. It's exactly what was meant. And the world, which has built so many systems to contain and manage and commodify that brilliance, doesn't always know what to do when it sees the real thing standing right in front of it. So you have compassion. She said that too. You have compassion for the world that doesn't always know how to hold you, for the institutions that weren't built for you, for the people who look at your light and find it uncomfortable. You have compassion for them, and you be your best self anyway. That's grace. That's hard-won, costly, beautiful grace. Lauryn Hill has been misunderstood. She has been underestimated. She has been written off and mocked and reduced to punchlines about concert lateness in ways that are painful to read even now. She has navigated motherhood and creativity and spirituality in industry and public scrutiny and personal loss and the enormous, constant weight of being a symbol of something, of Black excellence, of female artistry, of spiritual seriousness, for people who needed her to be those things even when she was just trying to figure out how to get through the day. And she is still here, still creating, still speaking her truth, still pouring into people, still fighting for her community, as she said on that stage in ways that not everyone knows about, but that are real. She told us she fights for y'all. She told us that fighting for us is fighting for herself, for her children, for her parents, for her grandparents, for her community. And if you've been paying attention, really paying attention, not to the tabloid version, but to the actual human being, the actual artist, the actual body of work, and the actual choices made over a lifetime, you believe her, because the evidence is there. The miseducation of Lauryn Hill is the evidence. 25 years of people finding themselves in those songs is the evidence. Every teenager who played X Factor on repeat at 2 a.m. while crying about someone is the evidence. Every young woman who heard Do Wop That Thing and felt seen and loved and challenged and celebrated all at once is the evidence. Every person who listened to Zion and found their own version of faith, their own version of choosing love over what the world told them was practical or sensible or smart is the evidence. She poured into us. She has been pouring into us for 30 years, and she's not done. So the next time you hear someone reducing Lauryn Hill to a story about tardiness or eccentricity or a one-album career, I want you to think about everything you now know. I want you to think about the girl from South Orange who sang through the booze at Apollo and kept going. The young woman who walked away from the biggest music group of the mid-90s to make something completely her own. The artist who gave us 19 million copies of herself, her actual self, and won 5 Grammys and Album of the Year and made history, and then stepped back from all of it because she valued her children and her faith and her integrity more than the machine. I want you to think about the mother who called her son's name on that awards stage and watched him walk up and smiled like the Grammy meant less than that moment. Because maybe it did. Maybe it should. And I want you to think about what she said. Don't sell your gift short. God made you that way. Let's celebrate each other. We're going to show them how we want to be loved. Because somebody out there needs your gift. And the world will be a safer place for all of us to shine when we take those words seriously. That's Lauryn Hill's message. That's what she came back to say. That's what she's always been saying. And now you know. God bless you, Lauryn. And thank you for all of it.